Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I'm your host. I'm the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 178 of Who's the Bossk, and we will be talking about the 3-episode third season premiere of Star Wars The Bad Batch, which is an animated series available to stream exclusively via Disney Plus. For that conversation, I have invited back on the show a regular guest, my friend and fellow Star Wars podcaster, Sarah Woloski. Sarah, how are you? Thank you for coming back to chat more Star Wars with me.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be on, I think, every season of Who's the Bossk now. Okay, cool.
Yeah. You have
exciting.
been on every season. So thank you for doing that. Always happy to chat with you. You're one of my favorite guests, which is why I keep inviting you back. Obviously, you've got your own Star Wars podcast that you co-host with your husband, Richard, who will also be on later in the season to talk about some kind of Star Wars content. But how has that podcast been going for you guys? It's called Skywalking Through Neverland, of course. What have you done in some recent episodes? Anything you want to point out and highlight for listeners to go and check out?
Yeah, sure thing. I know a lot of Laughing Place listeners are theme park fans, of course, and we're theme park fans. So Richard and I, we do a kids party entertainment business. So right now is kind of a lower time of year, like we're not as busy. So we are going to theme parks a lot. And this year, for the first time, we got universal passes, like annual passes.
Nice.
And so we were there last week, and we picked up, and you're gonna love this, Mike. We picked up these amazing magnets that are celebrating the 60th anniversary of the tram tour, but it's Jaws. It's so cute. And it's like the cutest little magnet. And then also, we just saw each other at Disneyland yesterday because they were doing Disneyland Anaheim Ducks Days at Disney. Or at DCA, excuse me. And so we are also annual pass members there, or magic key holders, blah, 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 whatever. So I got this, the Anaheim Ducks Fly Together towel.
Right.
And I love this. Like, I'm not a huge hockey fan, but I'm a huge Mighty Ducks fan, like the movie.
Sure.
And from the 90s. And so like the whole thing for me was like nostalgic, because it's just this whole Anaheim Ducks mascot was based like on the Mighty Ducks movie.
Right.
So to me, it's just celebrating the movie. So I had a lot of fun there that day. So speaking of this, all ties into Skywalking Through Neverland, because we did, I think on episode 450 or 451, just recent episodes, we did this whole Universal versus Disneyland debate on our podcast episode. And so it's a really fun show where we go through different points like theming, food, lands, all kinds of things for each theme park, and we compare and contrast. And there was a winner, but there's some pluses and minuses for both parks. So I recommend you go listen or watch that on YouTube.
Well, I won't ask who the winner is. I'll recommend people go and listen to that to find out. But did you have a preference between those two?
I did, but we surprised ourselves a little bit. Yeah. So I won't. Yeah.
So yeah, I the other thing I want to say is I did enjoy. I always enjoy this Anaheim Ducks Day. They've been doing it for years now at Disneyland Resort, and yeah, I was happy to get one of those little mini towels too. And I'm not really a sports guy. I don't know. Are you a sports person at all?
So I actually played soccer for 10 years growing up. So I love soccer, but watching sports, when I went to USC, we won all the football games. So I was into college football for a while, and that was really fun. But then I just kind of got out of it. So right now I'm not into sports so much, but I could watch football and kind of enjoy it, but it's not my thing. Like, I won't seek it out.
Fair enough. Yeah, I do find that hockey, if I sit down and watch a hockey game, I'm like more entertained than other sports. It's more like energetic, and there's a lot of kinetic movement. Like one year they sent me over to the Anaheim Ducks stadium, whose name
Honda
is
Center.
Honda Center. Yeah, it used to be called the Pond, I think. But I got to see a game over there for, like, they had the tie-in with Disneyland. It was like Disneyland Day at the stadium after the Disneyland, after the Ducks Day at the park. And I really enjoyed that. It was a blast. So yeah, next year, if you're, if you're listening to this and you want to check that out, I'm sure they'll be back at Disneyland Resort for Anaheim Ducks Day. As a reminder, we are recording this episode live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. If you happen to be watching along, be sure to comment, ask any questions that you may have, and we'll try to address them. Let's do something that we do in most episodes of Who's the Bossk, called the 5 Star Wars questions. Like you mentioned, Sarah, you've been on Who's the Bossk at least once per season. You've answered the 4 previous levels of the 5 Star Wars questions. Now you're up to level 5, which we have established is the final level. And that doesn't mean this is the final season of Who's the Bossk. It's just I have run out of questions. So next season, I'll find something else, some other fun game to play. But for now, we're up to level 5 of the 5 Star Wars questions. You ready for these?
I am.
Okay, number 1. What is your favorite Star Wars movie poster?
Okay, so this one was easy. Favorite would be Empire Strikes Back Style A poster, which is the Han and Leia mimicking the Gone with the Wind pose,
Yeah.
where Han is like, over Leia and Leia's like back
Yes.
and they're about to kiss. And to me, because Star Wars is all about the romance, is what brought me in. The Han and Leia romance was like my big way into Star Wars. So that really grabbed me and struck me. And I remember I had my Empire Strikes Back novel that had that on the cover of the
Okay.
novel. And I would like always look at it and like daydream, like, oh, Han, so as a little teenager. But I do have a runner-up.
Okay.
And I will mention it because I was in high school when the Phantom Menace was coming out. So I saw the teaser trailers, I saw the hype, and that teaser poster with little Anakin in the foreground and the shadow of Vader on the wall behind him is just, it's a picture of that's worth 1,000 words.
That's a
It's
great
fantastic.
poster. Great teaser poster. The teaser trailer for
Yeah.
the Phantom Menace is also great. Boy, the marketing team did a great job on the Phantom Menace. That's all I'll
And
say.
all the tie-ins for like Taco Bell and all that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I went to everything. I went to Taco Bell. I went to
Yep.
Burger King, all those things. Yeah.
I had those 4 posters that connected. I think those were from
Yeah.
Taco Bell.
Yeah, we
and then
actually talked to the
yeah.
person who helped create those posters on our show.
Oh, nice. Amazing.
Yeah.
And the other poster, your first choice, the Gone with the Wind style poster, I want to say you're the second person to answer this question on the show, and both people have chosen that poster. So
Wow.
a popular one, and hopefully we'll get a variety. But yeah, you can't really argue with that one. It's such a great, iconic image.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2, the 5 Star Wars questions, level 5. Do you have a favorite Star Wars fight scene or action sequence?
Okay. This is so hard because it's so broad of a question and there's so many things now, especially with all the new stuff. So, once again, I have 2 answers,
Okay.
Mike. So, for animation and for live action. So, my
Okay.
answer for animation is the Star Wars Rebels season 2 finale on Malachor, and it's Vader versus Ahsoka. And
Right.
when she like fights him and she like jumps on him and cuts off his helmet like halfway, so you see his
Yes.
eye, like Anakin's eye, and and then you
And they
hear
just
both.
ripped it off for Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, they totally did. What's the other half of the helmet?
Right.
Yes. But you hear both Anakin in Matt Lanter's voice and Vader
Yeah.
as James Earl Jones say Ahsoka. It's so like spine tingling. I love it. And she says in that fight, I am no Jedi. And it's just fantastic. And Kevin Kiner's music, like,
Well,
I
you've
love
probably
that.
seen the there's this new apparel line from her
Yes.
universe that
And
they
it has
sell at
that
the
scene,
parks.
right?
They're
Mhm.
all based on that scene and the line "I am no Jedi," which the other thing I want to say about that scene is I think you guys were there. I'm pretty sure that you were there too, because I think you interviewed Dave Filoni at that event
Yeah.
that they held at the Disney Studios lot where they
Yes.
screened that finale. They knew that they had a special episode on their hands there because they had that special screening for the season 2 finale of Rebels. So great choice. Very, very memorable scene there. What was
Yeah.
your live action one?
So my live action, again, The Phantom Menace. it's Darth Maul,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon, that battle on Naboo. That's so iconic. And that is the first time you see Jedi in live action flipping and spinning and doing all that crazy stuff that was
Yep.
only in my imagination up until then. Like, so that it blew me away. And then, of course, Duel of the Fates accompanying it is just incredible.
That's one thing that people can absolutely agree on across the board with the prequels is that the fight choreography is really amazing. What was the name of the choreographer? Nick something?
Oh, I don't
Boy, I'm
know.
blanking on it. Anyway, the fight choreographer is amazing. Did just a tremendous job, and all the actors learning those battle sequences. Geez,
Yeah, they
so
practiced that,
impressive.
like, what, for 6 months or something? Just back and forth to get as fast as they are, as
Yeah,
clean. Like, and then just Darth Maul, the actor, just doing his
Ray
flips and
Park. Yeah,
stuff. Ray Park, I mean, incredible.
absolutely. Yeah, great, wonderful choices for both of those. Number three, what do you, in your opinion, what is the coolest on-screen Star Wars costume? And I want you to be specific here. Don't just say Han Solo. I want you to say Han Solo, after he's unfrozen and he's wearing that shirt with the flap hanging open. You know what I'm talking about. Specific Star Wars costume.
Okay. Oh my gosh, this is so hard. Right now, I have, like, 3 answers written down, and I have to, like,
Okay.
pick one. Um, my first thought, I guess I'll just go with it, is the Padme lake dress. I just think it's beautiful. It's like the yellow to
Yeah,
purple to pink ombre,
right.
and the backless dress, and she just looks so gorgeous, and I always wished I could pull that off. Like, wear that kind of a dress, but
Not
yeah.
everybody can be Natalie Portman, and that's okay.
No, exactly. So, I just think that's gorgeous,
Well, that's
and so
another wonderful thing that I'll say
yeah.
about the prequels, the costume design. Jeez, they
Mhm.
knocked it out of the park with that too.
Yeah. So that would be my answer.
Okay, yeah. I want to say I looked it up, the name of the fight choreographer, so I give him proper credit. Nick Gillard is the name of that guy who did all the choreography. So great
Perfect.
choices there. Number four, if you could, okay, this is the only negative one. I said this last episode. So, by and large, these have all been positive. I did want to throw in one little negative one before I wrapped up the 5 Star Wars questions. So, if you were omnipotent and you could just magically, Thanos snap your fingers and erase one piece of Star Wars media or one element of the Star Wars franchise completely from existence, what would you choose?
Okay. I I would choose The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
And I have a reason. I have a very
Okay.
specific reason. It's because I personally loved the idea that was presented in The Last
Yeah.
Jedi that Rey could be anyone. They
Yeah.
had that whole sequence where Rey goes into that vision place and it's all a bunch of rays and she snaps her fingers, snap, 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 snap. And just that whole thing, like, I remember I also do Fangirls Going Rogue podcast, and we had a
Yeah.
whole conversation about how awesome it would be if, the galaxy is big. If Rey is special, but not descended from anyone specific that we know, like a Skywalker or a Palpatine or Obi-Wan or whatever,
Yeah.
then we can relate more with her. And we can also feel that we can be special and important just being who we are,
Right.
not by our birth. So yeah, I hope, I mean, so that would be why I would erase Rise of Skywalker. But I am hoping, and this will bring it back around to positive, I am hoping that all this retconning that they're doing in The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch will change my mind
Ooh,
eventually.
interesting. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. I
Yeah.
completely agree about, the movie itself. I can stomach it more and more the more I watch it.
Yeah.
And especially now with the work they're doing, like you said, in the ancillary materials, kind of building toward what was presented to us in The Rise of Skywalker. But I will say, like, after The Force Awakens, there were so many theories,
Hmm.
and I've said this before on the show, so many theories about who Rey was related to. Most of them were saying like Obi-Wan Kenobi, is she Obi-Wan's
Right.
granddaughter or whatever?
Yeah.
And you and I were probably immersed in reading those theories and what was it going to be. And we sat down in the theater for The Last Jedi, and I have to hand it to Ryan Johnson. He's a good mystery storyteller, as you've seen in Knives Out and the Poker Face show.
That's right.
Uh, and he picked the resolution to that mystery that I don't think anyone predicted. And to me, that's what really makes it clever. That it was nobody. That it wasn't. It reversed the trope of everybody has to be connected to somebody else. That she
Yeah.
came from nothing. To me, just on a storytelling level, and yes, thematically, and for what it says, to people, giving people hope to come from nowhere, like you said. For all those reasons, I thought it was very, very smart, and I was sad to see that undone by The Rise of
Yeah.
Skywalker too. So can't argue with that. Number 5, the fifth and final of all the Star Wars questions. This one's looking more forward looking. What do you personally want to see happen? What do you hope will happen in the future of Star Wars?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is such a big question. I
Yeah.
like don't really have an answer for this.
Anything, anything,
Um
anything. Throw it
yeah.
out there. Yeah.
Uh so okay. Okay, I'm going to go with just what recent media I've watched. So I
Okay.
just rewatched The Marvels this week
Okay.
on Disney Plus, and you had like the three women banding together against Darben, who is also a woman, and like it was created by like all these women, like most of the heads of the departments. Like I watched the behind the scenes were all
Mhm.
women. Laura Cartman was a composer. So I think it would be cool to see some kind of Star Wars movie put together kind of in that fashion
Okay.
by women, and to see what happens. And I I thought it was so fun, The Marvels. So I would want a Star Wars version of that.
Right. So we are getting, I guess, the first female director of a Star Wars theatrical film for the upcoming Ray movie, right?
Right, if that
But
happens.
if yeah, who knows with all these
Who
things
knows what
getting,
Dave Filoni is now was named head of,
yes,
creative COO, basically.
yes,
Whatever.
chief
And
creative officer, right?
thank you, thank you. And so now he has kind of charge of he's like the Kevin Feige of Star Wars.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, like, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these things got shifted and changed and
Okay.
stuff, but
But
I would
at the
be
same
behind
time,
it.
even though it's a female director, I don't believe the writer is a woman.
Okay.
So what you're saying is, it would be nice to see a project, TV show, or a movie that, and I think, there's a lot of women involved with the Acolyte too, right? Like the
Yeah.
showrunner is a woman. But yeah, totally with you there. Always happy to have more diversity behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera. So terrific choice there. And that's going to bring us to the end of the 5 Star Wars questions for this episode. And our next segment is called Star Wars Headlines. And this is where we talk about the news that has come out of a galaxy far, far away since the last episode. It's been a little over a month, actually, since I've done a Who's the Bossk. So we've got a few things to get through. A big announcement recently was that we're getting to see The Phantom Menace, which you were talking about earlier. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, which is completely nuts. But
Yeah.
it's returning to theaters in May, the day before May the 4th. So May the 4th is on a Saturday. That Friday, you can go and watch, and the following week, you could go and watch The Phantom Menace back in movie theaters. You excited for this?
Oh, yes, definitely. This will bring me back to my high school.
Yeah.
I graduated high school and went right from my last final to
Right.
waiting in line to buy tickets for the Phantom Menace. Like literally, I stayed the night at my local theater with a bunch of Star Wars friends and played Star Wars trivia all night. Right after I finished my final of high school, like completely. So it was a really cool experience for me, and I can't wait to like relive that again, but with like our Skywalker family.
Awesome. Yeah. I think 1 year ahead of you. So this came out between my freshman year and sophomore year of college. And yeah, it was all anyone was talking about before and
Yeah.
after. So I will almost certainly see this again, probably at the El Capitan Theater if they play it there, and which I'm sure they will in Hollywood.
Mhm.
So very interesting, very intrigued by this to experience it, with all that we know now, kind of like having a different context and looking back. There's this movie called 12 Monkeys, and there's a great line in that movie where like he's talking because they're in a movie theater at the end watching Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, and he's talking about how every time you watch a movie it's different because you're a different person. And that I always think of that like when I like revisit a movie later on, like a years later or whatever, and to see like how the person I am now reacts to that movie. So very curious to see that again in the theater. Other news that broke recently, Cassian Cassian Andor himself, Diego Luna, the actor, announced that Andor, the Star Wars live action TV series, has wrapped season 2 of its production, and we're expecting that to come out sometime next year, 2025. So what do you think about this show? Are you excited about Andor season 2, Sarah?
I'm absolutely excited. I think Andor is probably the piece of Star Wars media put out since Disney bought Star Wars. That's like the best in terms of
Right.
everything. Just like the design, the costume, the conception, the how it turned out, just story. Like it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely up there for me as well. I do think it leans a little bit it leans away from some of the more fantastical elements of Star Wars, which appeal to me too. It's kind of missing some of that I guess what you would call like uh
Fantasy. Fantasy
yeah.
element.
It doesn't have as much fantasy. That's right. Um but I do think it's amazing television. It's extremely well written and well performed, well shot. You can't really argue with any of the creative choices. I don't know if it 100% feels like Star Wars to me, but
Hmm.
as TV, I think it's amazing. Definitely looking forward to more of that to see how that wraps up and they get ever closer to the beginning of Rogue One. So
Yeah.
hoping, I mean, do we know for sure whether Alan Tudyk is coming back for this to play K2SO?
As far as what was announced previously, yes,
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah, I
So I
remember
don't
there was like that
I'm
D23 Expo where they came out
mhm.
together when they announced the show, right? So
Yeah, so I think he was proposed for season 2 or at least confirmed for
yeah,
season 2. Now, I don't know what the actor strike, what that all did in the
right.
writer strike, that really halted everything with Andor. Like we should have already had that out, I think, right? Or
It
yeah.
definitely the production I think got delayed. I think they had like a week or two left in
Yeah.
filming or something like that, which was a shame. So yeah, it did get
Mhm.
pushed back a little bit, but still very excited. I'm sure it'll be worth the wait. Andor
Yeah.
season 2, 2025. We're expecting that. Young Jedi Adventures. This is kind of on the other end of the spectrum. If seems like the most adult show that's come out of Disney Plus and Star Wars, Young Jedi Adventures skews the youngest because it's for kind of preschoolers. But it's still a lot of fun. It's an animated show. You can watch it on Disney Plus and the Disney Junior basic cable network. And the fun thing about this recent batch of episodes that came out, I think it was on Valentine's Day, actually, February 14th, they finally got to Batu. So at the Star Wars celebration in London last year, I remember Matt Martin, he's a member of the Lucasfilm Story Group. He was on stage at Celebration. He announced that Young Jedi Adventures would be going to Batu. And everybody I know who's a fan of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge was super excited by this because we haven't really seen it represented on TV yet or in the movies or anything. I was hoping it would show up in The Mandalorian or they would visit it
Mm.
in one of these Disney Plus shows. So finally, we got that in the form of an animated show on Young Jedi Adventures. And I watched those episodes. I thought it was a lot of fun to see those specific locations. You can see first of all, the geography, they got almost 100% right of where everything sits. Obviously, this is Young Jedi Adventures takes place during the High Republic
Mhm.
era, which is a couple hundred years before the original trilogy. So it's an earlier period in the timeline for Batu and Black Spire Outpost, but everything is where it should be. You can see the exterior of the cantina. You can see the spaceport area. The milk stand is there in an earlier incarnation. So it was just
Are
cool
the
to,
black
yeah.
spires more like trees or are they still
No,
petrified?
they're still petrified, but I will
Okay.
say If you haven't checked it out yet, the spires themselves play a very important role
Oh, okay.
in the first episode where they visit Batu. So you haven't seen those yet,
I
Sarah?
have not. No, we actually we're behind. We're
Okay.
like we just finished episode 6 of the whole series last
Okay.
night. So, but I am enjoying it a lot, and we just take it in little fits and
Yeah.
starts sometimes.
It's fun. It's definitely for kids. So I
Oh
skipped
yeah,
ahead a
definitely.
little bit to watch those Batu episodes. And then I want to check out also the finale of this season, which ties in a little bit more with the High Republic, like publishing
Oh,
stuff. So anyway, that's Young Jedi Adventures. You can check that out on Disney Plus and Disney Junior. Another item coming out recently is in the world of auctions, actually. So this is an interesting news item that I saw, that a script from the original Star Wars film that was in the possession of Harrison Ford, who played Han Solo, was abandoned by him at this apartment or flat, as you would call it, in London.
oh,
And somebody found it and sold it recently, and it went for $13,600, which I actually thought that wasn't as much as I would have
yeah.
predicted.
I
Like,
wouldn't
apparently
think.
it has his notes on it and everything.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, that's not a lot.
I
I would
know, I
be
know.
like, I'd buy that. Yeah.
That sounds, yeah, it's sort of like relatively affordable. So congratulations to whoever won that. That's a very cool, very unique item to own for your Star Wars collection. Let's see, in video game news, Star Wars Battlefront. So there's been some recent Battlefront games that have come out for uh more more current console generations, but there were older Battlefront games. I remember I had one, I think it was on Nintendo GameCube or something. This is 20 years ago. That game and its sequel, the older ones, are being collected in a 2-game set that you can buy and download for
Ah,
your Nintendo Switch. All the current generation consoles, PlayStation 5, Xbox, what's the recent Xbox? Series X. And you'll be able to download those in a few weeks. March
huh.
14th. Those are coming to current generation consoles. Have you played any of these Star Wars Battlefront games?
I don't think I have. I do have a Nintendo Switch,
Yeah.
but I mostly play Disney
Okay.
Dream,
Yeah.
whatever.
Dreamlight Valley, is that what it
That
is?
one, yes.
Yeah, I have not played
Dreamlight
that,
Valley.
but
It's so fun.
I've heard about it. Okay, so that's Star Wars Battlefront coming to current gen consoles. The old Battlefront games you'll be able to download in a few weeks. Comic books. We had one comic this week, which is unusually
Wow.
short list.
Bear. Yeah.
Usually the average is 2 or 3. There were periods a couple years ago where we were getting, I don't know, 4 or 5 every week, which is just too much. 1 is fine. 2 I can handle. That's about where I want it to be. This week's comic, really good. Star Wars number 43 by Charles Soule. It is about Luke Skywalker trying to heal a red kyber crystal, which, if you've
Whoa.
read like the
Yeah.
Ahsoka novel, they talk about healing kyber crystals and stuff. So
Mhm.
very interesting getting into that lore. Luke kind of, because this takes place between Empire and Jedi, and it's Luke still learning about the lore of the Jedi and the Force and all these things that go with it. Uh,
Didn't Ahsoka do
yeah,
that? She healed her like white what lightsabers are now
yeah,
they were from healed red
right.
ones. Yeah.
Yes.
Kyber
So
crystals.
that's what it reminded me of, the Ahsoka novel, right? That's where that
Yeah.
happens.
Mhm.
So yeah, now Luke is learning about that too. So uh Sarah, are you caught up at all on the comics, the Star Wars comics?
I'm not. I have Marvel Unlimited, so I'm
Yeah.
like 6 months behind. And then I kind of read it in fits and starts. I'll like do a bunch of comic book reading and then I'll put it
Okay.
down for like 2 months and
Okay.
focus on books or podcasts or something.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think when
yeah.
you catch up to that one, you'll enjoy it quite a bit. Okay. I did like a quick merchandise roundup. These are all things that you can go and read about on laughingplace.com that we've written about recently. Regal Robot, which is a great company. I've had the owner, Tom Spina, on the show. They make a bunch of prop replicas and like themed furniture for Star Wars fans and other franchises. But they've got a new puppet replica of the Wampa from The Empire Strikes Back. It's like the torso up to his head. It
Yeah,
looks awesome.
crazy. How much is
So
that? Is it
I actually haven't looked at the price, but it's
okay?
probably
In the
I don't know if
thousands.
it's more than the Harrison Ford script, but uh,
Oh, wow. But yeah, that
it's
stuff Tom
probably
Spina does a lot of
yeah.
high-end stuff at
Yes,
Regal Robot.
high-end collectibles. If you're, if you've got one of those rooms that sits filled with Star Wars prop replicas and stuff, this is going to be another one that you'll probably want. Check that out on laughingplace.com or just go to Regal Robot. And then Rocklove has released new pendant necklaces from The Mandalorian. I think there's one of the Razor Crest and one of the Naboo N1 Starfighter that you
Yeah.
can check out. There's an Amazon exclusive Ahsoka and Droid Companions box set. I think it's got Ahsoka
Hmm.
Tano, and it's got, I want to say, 4 droids from the show
Are
Ahsoka.
these like action figures?
Action figures, yes. I
Okay.
forgot to mention that. I believe it's from Hasbro, and I think it's the 3 3/4 inch scale
Oh,
vintage
okay.
collection. So if you're a droid collector, this is a good thing to pick up because always fun to have more droids in your toys. Speaking of Hasbro, they put out, this was out a while ago, the Boba Fett prototype helmet, which if you've seen that artwork, I think it's Joe Johnston who originally designed the Boba Fett armor, and it was white originally. He was supposed to be like a super stormtrooper kind of guy, but they put out the prototype helmet, which is white, and I think it was sold out for a while, but now you can buy it again on Shop
Oh,
Disney, which is now called Disney Store. They've changed the name
yeah.
of that, so check that out. And
I'll have to
then
let Richard know about
yeah,
that. He loves those prototype helmets.
okay, cool, yeah, that'd be another fun thing to. I just got some of those. I was gifted some of those helmets from my boss. Um,
Oh.
I got oh boy, there's some good ones. The Mandalorian's helmet and
Mm.
the Flame Trooper helmet from the Mandalorian, which is really sweet. Um, Lastly, in merchandise, Hasbro again for the vintage collection, which is the 3 3/4 inch scale. They are releasing the New Republic E-wing Starfighter, with the droid called KE4N4. And what I love about this droid, it's an astromech droid. It's inspired by, if you saw it in the show Ahsoka, the droid design is inspired by the look of the original R2D2 action figure. So they took the way
Oh,
that
yeah.
toy looked and transposed that onto a real droid in the show. And now you can buy a toy version of that droid, all coming back around to where it started. And you can order that on HasbroPulse.com, or you can go and read more about it on LaughingPlace.com. Any of this stuff sound exciting to you, Sarah? You
So
said the
I
helmet would be exciting to Richard.
helmet, yeah, definitely that, um, I think, well, if anything, Rock Love jewelry, I'm a big fan of Rock Love. I have a lot of Ahsoka pieces
Okay.
from Rock Love. The N1 Starfighter Rock Love necklace looks really cute.
Yeah.
So I might get that. But as for the other toys, I'm more of a collector of useful items. So like
Right.
jewelry or kitchen tools or things,
Yeah.
like not so much a collector of figures that sit on your shelf.
Yeah. I prefer the useless items that will sit on my shelf and collect dust, as you can see behind
Got
me.
it.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay,
All good.
lastly, in Star Wars headlines for this week is something that was announced just this morning, and this is a new reference book from DK Publishing. It's called Star Wars: The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, and it is written by Dr. Chris Kempshall, who has co-written one Star Wars reference book before, and that was called Battles That Shaped the Galaxy, or Battles That Changed the Galaxy, which I really enjoyed. So this should be a good one. It's all about the Empire from beginning, Order 66, till
Hmm.
the end of,
Yeah.
not even Return of the Jedi. I think you'd say the end of the Empire was the Battle of Jakku, which was
Right.
documented in the Aftermath novel. So this is going to incorporate all that stuff, the books, the movies, the animation, and it's all about Palpatine's reign in the galaxy. Those, what is it, like 30 years, I think, roughly, but beginning to end. So very excited for that. That's coming from DK Publishing July 9th, and I'll look forward to that. That brings us to our main topic for this episode, and this is a 3-episode premiere of Star Wars: The Bad Batch. It's another animated series on Disney Plus from Lucasfilm Animation. Sarah, what is your history? I don't think you've come on to talk about a Bad Batch episode specifically before, to my
Oh,
recollection. So, what's your history with this show? How did you feel about seasons 1 and 2?
okay. So when the Bad Batch was first announced, I think it was announced in all that crop of a lot of Star Wars media coming to Disney Plus. And it was a show I wasn't interested in at all because it was about like five guys in a war. And I'm like overall not as interested in that kind of storytelling.
Sure.
But my mind was changed when I saw the first episode with the introduction of Omega. She completely changed the entire like tenure of the series. All of a sudden, it wasn't just a show about these dudes fighting a war. It was a family and how each member of the Bad Batch had like a different fatherly or brotherly relationship to
Mhm.
Omega. And so, like the first season, Hunter and Omega's relationship was really explored a lot. Like he's kind of the fatherly figure. And then season 2 made me absolutely fall in love with Tech. They did
Okay.
a lot of building between Omega and Tech's relationship.
Mm,
So, spoiler alert, when he
yeah.
sacrificed himself in the finale, like I was all in and tears were just streaming down my face. I literally could not believe that they were killing off my favorite character.
Oh gosh.
And so basically, yeah, I was all in. And also, I do have to say that every season, Richard and I have also had the privilege of talking in roundtables with the executive producers and directors, writers, Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbett. And then also voice of Omega, Michelle Ang. She is just the most adorable person ever. And also the voice of the Bad Batch, D. Bradley Baker, who,
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a veteran in voice acting, and it's so cool to talk to him. So, because we've learned so much about the storytelling and how the recording sessions were done and stuff like that, as well as the storytelling is just so great. I'm just all in on the Bad Batch now.
Yeah, I've grown to really appreciate it as well over these last couple years. Sorry about Tech, by the way. They really
Yeah.
made you the way you said it, they really made you love him before they like pulled that rug out from underneath you.
Yeah. Well, to me,
Um,
he really reminded me like in Ghostbusters, Egon was always
yes,
my favorite, and he
right.
was the techie one. In I want to say, oh, in Star Trek Next Generation, Data, I always
Yeah,
had like an affinity for Data.
that's
He
right.
reminded me of my dad. My mom and I would watch Star Trek and make fun of my dad and go, "Look, you're just like Data." And so like the fact that Tech it was like it's all rolled into this nostalgia of these techie guys because they
Yeah.
all remind me of my dad too. So like, yeah, you could see how his loss just kinda hit me.
I want to say real quick, we've been doing trivia night at have you guys been to the Scum and Villainy Cantina in
Yes.
Hollywood?
Yes, we have.
Every Wednesday night they do trivia, and we started going regularly just within the last couple of months. And this week, every week they do a category that's like, what's the connection?
Oh.
So it's 10 questions in the category. The first nine are all just kind of random questions about pop culture. And the 10th question is, what is the connection between all these things? And this week, this past Wednesday, they did first of all, the answer to the first question, the question was, what's the 24th letter in the Greek alphabet? Okay. And we were like, Omega, right?
Oh!
And I was like, is this gonna be the Bad Batch? And the answer to question two, it was like something about Cheers, Rhea Perlman. So I was like, okay, it's the Bad Batch. So
Yeah.
the connection was the Bad Batch, which I thought was so they do like really geeky trivia at this bar in Hollywood. So I really appreciated that. But yeah, I've become a fan of this show. I wasn't super into the Clone Wars when it was airing. In fact, it took me until maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago until I finally caught up on 100% of the Clone Wars.
Wow.
So it took me a while, and this is basically a spin-off of that show. It's a spin-off
Mhm.
of the final season of the Clone Wars where they introduced the Bad Batch characters. So, it's really made me come to appreciate that period of Star Wars storytelling more, and the whole idea that the clones, even though they're all clones of the same person, Jango Fett, they can all have their own individual personalities and names, and you can get to know them each as individual people,
Yeah.
and that's very especially true of the Bad Batch because they are technically what you would call defective clones, which
Defective.
is yeah, they're branded with this number 99, Clone Force 99, but their defects give them special abilities that they use in an A-team kind of way to go out and have these adventures. It's takes place after the rise of the Empire. So this is a period of the Star Wars galaxy that I like to see explored a little bit more. We haven't had a tremendous amount of stories in that era right after the rise of Emperor Palpatine. So that appeals to me quite a bit. What else would you say to people about the end of season 2, like kind of where we left off before we got into season 3, just as a refresher? Like if you were to give somebody like a previously on the
Yeah.
Bad Batch, where did we leave things after season 2?
So throughout season 2, Crosshair had basically sided with the Empire. He's one of our Bad Batch members, and he believes that good soldiers follow orders. And so he was like on the side of the Empire, whereas the rest of the Bad Batch were like going against the Empire at this point. But then the episode The Outpost finally changed his mind. And that's when
Yeah,
Crosshair killed his superior Imperial officer because he could see that the Empire didn't care about the clones anymore. He was just a thing to them. He wasn't a person.
right.
And so then he was imprisoned. So at this point, Clone Force 99, they're trying to find Crosshair's location. They decided to infiltrate Tarkin's stronghold. But while trying to escape capture, this is when Tech sacrifices himself to save them all. Um, and that was so sad. And then to put insult into injury, Sid, who's Rhea Perlman, voiced by Rhea Perlman,
Yes,
she double crosses the Bad Batch because she knows she has a lot of knowledge about them, and this leads to Omega's capture by the Empire. So she is taken to Mount Tantus, and so that's where we begin. And Crosshair is also taken to Mount Tantus, so they are
right.
both in that same location as season 3 begins. The rest of the Bad Batch, I think, what was it? So Wrecker and Hunter are still like in the Bad Batch, but you have Echo who has decided to join um all these clone names. Rex. He's
Rex.
decided to join Rex in doing another mission. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah,
So like our Bad Batch of 6 is down to 2.
right.
Crazy.
Okay, so like I mentioned, we got 3 episodes. Oh, first of all, you mentioned Mount Tantus, and I wanted to talk about that
Yes.
a little bit because this location, this is one of those things every once in a while, the current creators of Star Wars in the new canon that was, the expanded universe was wiped clean, sort of, and pushed to the side when Disney bought Star Wars 2012. Um, but the current creators in building out this new canon between all the movies will pick and choose things from the expanded universe. And this is one of those. So Mount Tantus, I think, was introduced in the Timothy Zahn books, right?
Correct. Heir to the Empire
As
trilogy.
the place where cloning was happening.
Yep.
So that has been brought over into the current canon, and it's where the Empire has their base, and they're running all these cloning experiments, and that's kind of where season 3 starts off. We got 3 episodes to kick off season 3. Titles of these episodes were Confined, directed by Saul Rees, written by Jennifer Corbett. Paths Unknown was directed by Nate Villanueva, written by Matt Michnovitz. And Shadows of Tantus was the third one, directed by Stuart Lee and written by Matt Michnovitz, who was also the story editor for all 3 of those episodes. Sarah, did you think after watching these first 3, now
Mhm.
I know you had access to more than 3, so have you watched beyond that?
Yeah, I watched through
Yeah.
8
Okay.
episodes at this point.
I didn't get a chance to watch past 3, so we'll keep it. There's going to be spoilers for these first 3 episodes, but nothing beyond that. We'll keep it to that. But did you think it made sense for Disney Plus and Lucasfilm to release these 3 episodes together as the premiere?
Absolutely. I think it was in their best interest to release all 3 at once
Yeah,
because I feel like episode 1 by itself would have been a bit of a mistake. It's called Confined. It
yeah,
feels confined. It feels very like um what is that called? Just it just feels very, not boring is not the word, but it's very stale. Like, but
Yeah,
it's
or
meant to.
static,
It's
yeah.
yeah, it's
Or
meant to feel that way because
right.
that's how Omega is feeling for like
Yes.
the 5.5, 6 months that she's in Tantus. So I like that episode one, you see where Omega and Crosshair are and how it's just very hopeless. With episode two, you get an overview of the Bad Batch currently who are free, which just consists, of course, of Wrecker and Hunter.
Yeah.
And you see what they're up to in the wider galaxy. And then episode three is your kind of Return of the Jedi Battle of the Sarlacc moment where Omega and Crosshair escape, and you get this very exciting not finale, but just exciting storyline that the good guys
Right.
win. So I feel
Right.
like it was a perfect story arc to begin with.
Yeah, it would have felt a little, I mean, it is serialized storytelling, so you almost kind of expect that kind of thing. But they've done this in the past with the Bad Batch where they'll kind of pair certain episodes together and release them on the same day. So I am glad that they did that as well. So you get like the full 3 episode arc of the escape from Mount Tantus. And I think it was satisfying. Yeah, it would have felt, oh boy, we would have been so anxious like going into these
Yeah.
next episodes if they only did the one. So I totally agree. Did you have any other like just general thoughts about these
Uh
3 episodes?
yeah, I mean, just so I've watched all three of them like three times just in
Okay.
our prep and recording and
Yeah.
talking about this. And and so I feel like Confined, even though I said it was a little confined, I think that's my favorite episode because they did such a good job of everything between the production design, between the sound, between the music. Everything is telling you that this is a hopeless place, from the water drips that you see that right before
Right.
you see Omega, from the sound of the water. We got to talk to Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbett about how they had talked so much about just those water drips.
Now what was that
um
supposed to, that was that like a sink? Was that like a space sink that
that's
we
her
were looking
sink.
at? Okay.
Yeah, that's a sink. I know, I thought at first it was like, is that like her bathroom?
Or
Like I
toilet. Yeah, I
her
thought
no,
yeah,
I
I
think
think
it
so.
was a sink. I
Okay.
think it's a sink, but there is something very specific about water because both Trisha Barr, from my co-host on Fangirls Going Rogue,
Yeah.
and us asked Jennifer and Brad about water in the Bad Batch, and
Hmm.
they hedged these questions. They hedged
Oh,
them. And if you think about it, clones come from the water planet of, what is that called?
right.
Right,
Camino.
Camino.
Yeah.
Water has been a significant part of many of the finales of the Bad Batch,
Ooh.
and also those two drips that happen, and it's every time you see Omega in that first episode, they go to the water first, then pan to her. Those two drips always happen. And then in the third episode, which is another good reason why it was released in all three, in the third episode, when Omega's blood is finally put in that centrifuge and is ticking down, every time you see Omega's blood in there, like two drips drop from the blood.
Oh.
So water, blood, like, clones come from water. It's a big deal, and they hedged our questions about that.
That's super interesting. Yeah, that hadn't occurred to me at all, but yeah, that is a recurring theme,
Yeah.
maybe pointing towards some other stuff coming up along the
Mhm.
way. Yeah, and the other thing we should talk about Confined is these new, I think they're newly introduced dog-like creatures. Have we
Yeah,
seen these before to your knowledge?
not that I know of. So they're Lurka.
Lurka, yeah,
And yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, but I think it's fun because we have Loth cats, which are like cats. Now we
right.
have Lurka, which are like,
Yes,
big hound dogs.
right.
And Omega, uh she what is that called? She makes Betcha. Betcha is
Bitch.
her her friend now
Right.
and helper. Yeah, I love Batcher, the addition of Batcher, and just as a small tease, Batcher does become kind of part of the Bad Batch.
Right, yeah, and, well, first of all, I'll say my boss was a little disturbed by that episode. He's always bothered, rightly so, he's bothered by animal abuse. Like, he
Ah,
had a lot of trouble with, like, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3,
ooh,
even though
yeah.
these are, like, CGI creations, they're not real animals, but just the concept of this animal abuse and the storytelling bothered him. But there is a happy ending for Batcher here, that he gets to leave the Empire just like Omega and Crosshair and
Yeah.
go off and join the Bad Batch. So
Well, it's a
happy.
she. Batcher's a she.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Batcher is a she. And yeah, Omega kind of, what do they say, domesticates
Yeah,
her.
that's the word I was looking for. Yes.
Yeah, by cleaning her wound and releasing her. She releases her out into the wild. And there's this other big, like, kind of like ape bear like creature living out there
Yeah. It
in
reminded
the
me
wild.
of a werewolf, actually.
Right. Yeah, all sorts of animals combined, kind of. That
Mhm.
thing is scary
Yeah.
though. Oh, when at the end, when that monster is about to attack Crosshair and Omega, and the Lurka come and jump on it, did that remind you of Jurassic Park?
Uh, no, actually, that reminded me of Harry Potter.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to like number 3
Yes.
where the werewolf is howling at the moon
Okay.
and what is it? Oh, Sirius Black as the dog comes and yeah.
There you go. I'm see,
But
I'm not a Harry Potter person. I've seen the movie, but not for a long time. Um, I immediately, what jumped in my mind was the climax of Jurassic Park
yeah.
with the T-Rex and Alan Grant and the kids are backing away,
Yeah.
and the raptors come in and jump all over the T-Rex. That's immediately what I thought of.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah, so that was the first episode. Then we had Paths Unknown, which, like
Hold
you
on,
said, it.
I have to say that's
Yeah.
not the last Jurassic Park reference you're gonna see in this season.
Oh, okay. Now I'm trying to think of the little vials of blood, or the.
No, it's
Uh,
something coming up.
okay, you'll have to tell me. Paths Unknown, like you said, it zooms in on Wrecker and Hunter, and they meet up with they're kind of like running mercenary missions and bounties, and they have one from Angelica Houston. It's like this weird
Yes.
huge star guest starring. And she was in the Star Wars Visions animated series too. She did a voice in
Oh,
that, which I was like,
awesome.
this is Angelica Houston. Like, weirdly, she's in Captain EO. She was
Yep.
in Star Wars Visions. Now she must be a fan or something. Like, somebody must have. I
I
don't
would
know.
think so, but I have to toot my own horn here. I
Yeah.
called it that Lady Durand was Angelica Houston before I saw the credits. I was
Oh
like, that
yeah,
sounds like Angelica
yeah.
Houston.
Very, very familiar voice. Let's see.
Yeah.
Tony Petty said, sounds like that galactic plumber used a bad patch. Okay, talking about Omega's sink in her room.
Nice. That's hilarious.
Oh boy. And then they get this information about a planet where there's an abandoned facility that's sort of like the one on Mount Tantus, but
Right.
it's the one that they were previously using, I guess. So there they find a few other clones, younger clones of Jango Fett, one of which is voiced by Daniel Logan, right? So he played
Mhm.
Boba Fett, young Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones. Appropriately enough, he's playing a different clone of Jango Fett here. And then, like you said, there's like this sort of plant-like monster that's stalking them through this whole episode, and at the end, it kind of turns into a big Sarlacc kind
Yeah.
of thing, which was fun. Anything else? So I kind of wanted to point out, skipping ahead here on our little outline. There's a new villain that got introduced at the end of season 2 of the Bad Batch. His name is Dr. Hemlock. He's
Mhm.
voiced by Jimmy Simpson, who's a great character actor. If you watch Westworld, he was a big part of that show.
Hmm.
And I knew him first from David Letterman. He was a recurring bit player on that show, on the Late Show with David Letterman. He played a character called Lyle the Intern, which,
Oh.
if Letterman ever had a villain, he was it. So I almost wonder if I had been given the opportunity to ask them some questions about the Bad Batch. I want to ask why they cast Jimmy Simpson in this role. I have a feeling it's because of his portrayal of Lyle the Intern. If you go and type in Lyle the Intern on YouTube and watch all those clips, he's so hilarious as this character.
Ah.
But I thought it was interesting how episode 2, Paths Unknown, that we're talking about, did not have Dr. Hemlock in, but you still kind of felt his evil was shining through
Mhm.
to me because of the
Those slither
wreckage that he
vines.
left behind, you know?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, like, because they were performing these tests, because these clones got abandoned on this planet, you could still kind of feel his presence. And for that reason, I just thought, "Oh, I'm kinda haunted by this villain, Dr. Hemlock." I'm really starting to get into him as a Star Wars villain. What do you have any thoughts on this guy?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm surprised Disney didn't ask you to come on the roundtables because you always have some very insightful questions.
For
So,
whatever reason, the animation, we'd never get invited.
oh,
I don't
weird.
know why. I don't know
Huh.
why.
Okay. I don't know why either. We had
If you're
there was
listening out there, Lucasfilm, we would
yeah,
love to come and
there was 10 Star Wars fan sites on there, but it
yeah.
was but okay, so Hemlock first of all, the name that's a villain's name if there ever
Yeah,
was one.
right.
Hemlock is like poison that poisons you,
Well, it makes
makes
me
you
think
die.
of, there was a character on Sesame Street growing up. It was kinda like a Sherlock Holmes detective guy, but his name
Oh,
was Sherlock Hemlock, I think.
oh,
That's what it
funny.
made me think of, but yeah, go ahead.
I kind of love to hate him. He
Oh,
is
yeah.
very creepy. He's kind of that cold, calculating evil rather than the bombastic, overbearing overlord evil. And he just, I mean, he just has an attitude toward everyone. Like he's got that "I'm better than you" kind of attitude
Yeah,
that I just find super annoying in real life. So to me, he's like a perfect villain. He's someone I
right.
would just not I would hate just in general because he's got that kind of standoffish "I'm better than you"
Sure.
attitude. And I think they did a very good job of reminding us that he's the villain by, I mean, even the very first scene of episode 1, you have that ship of Imperials coming to Tantus and they crash outside the borders. And Hemlock's like, oh, well, they're outside the borders. There's nothing we can do. Speaking of Jurassic Park, that kind of reminded me of the opening of Jurassic Park, where, the
Oh,
dinosaur gets out, um, and he's like,
right,
shoot
right,
her. And it's like this massive scene where she kills everyone, the
right.
dinosaur. So that's kind of what happens in the beginning of that first episode. And
Yes,
then you're reminded that Hemlock's the villain because Hemlock's like, yeah, we're not going to go save them. No, they're dying. As you hear the
right.
screams of the stormtroopers in the background, just like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, the loving to hate him thing is a great way to put it, and that makes the best kind of villain in my book. And I haven't been collecting the Bad Batch action figures, but if they'd made one of Dr. Hemlock,
Oh,
I would have to pick it up because he's becoming a favorite of mine. Let's talk about this final of the 3 episodes, Shadows of Tantus. This is where we really get into the so-called Project Necromancer, which what we can extrapolate from the information that we've been given is this is the Empire's project to clone Emperor Palpatine, right? This is all our
that's what I
understanding.
always thought. Richard
Okay,
had, like, a different idea. I'm like, "No, no, no. No, sweetie. No, this is retconning Palpatine returned."
right.
Right? I
Somehow
mean,
Palpatine returned. We're getting this we're getting the details
yeah.
now. So I wanted to talk about the Mandalorian actually because
Okay.
we kind of thought the same thing. We thought the same thing going through those first 3 seasons of the Mandalorian. Oh, they're working on the cloning the Emperor project, and that's leading into what we saw in the Rise of Skywalker. But it turned out at the end of season 3 of the Mandalorian that the cloning project that we saw there was actually to clone Moff Gideon so he could take over the Empire. And he was actually trying to imbue himself, his clones, with the Force. So in um in the Mandalorian, they needed Grogu's blood, right? That's the whole plot of the Mandalorian. They wanted Grogu's
Yes.
blood. That was going to somehow help clone the Emperor and give the clone the same power that the Emperor has, the same connection with the Force. And now it seems like this Project Necromancer, has a lot of the same uh processes behind it because they need so they're from the beginning of episode 1 in season 3, they're testing the blood of all the clones that are being held captive in Mount Tantus.
Mhm.
There's a lot of these shots of the vials going around the circle on that piece of machinery, and they're looking for something called the M count, which, if you know Star Wars, this is a reference to the midichlorians from the Phantom Menace. And eventually, by the end of episode 3, we find out that, it just so happens that Omega is the Grogu, which we already kind of knew because Omega's story function on the Bad Batch has been similar to Grogu on the Mandalorian,
Mm.
but now we know that she has a high midichlorian count, right? Is that your
Yeah,
interpretation of this?
either that or she has the same M count that the original
Right.
clone donor had. And so there was no degradation between her M count and the original. And so whatever the cloning process to clone her, they want to like repeat that, you know? Or
Okay.
that's what I don't know if that necessarily means she has the force. I think it just means that there was no degradation between that original and then her as a clone.
Now the problem with my grasp of the Bad Batch is I think I've seen each episode once or twice. It's not a show that I'm rewatching like 5 or 6 times like The Mandalorian. Um, but I wanna say that I recall some at least 1 or 2 moments from season 2 where they implied that maybe Omega had force abilities. Am I wrong in that recollection, or has that come up in any of your discussions about this yet?
If it is, it's very minimal. I would say that almost Hunter has been more implied than anyone else
Okay.
because he can kind of predict things or like sense things. You know, he's a tracker, right? So he can
Yeah.
sense things kind of
Okay.
before they appear. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I do wonder how that's gonna pan out and what that means. So, the way this episode ends, Crosshair and Omega, basically spurred on by Nala Se, who we haven't mentioned yet, one of the Kaminoans, who
Mhm.
has been brought in by the Empire to Mount Tantus to work on this cloning project. She warns Omega. She's like, "You gotta get out of here, because when they test your blood, they're gonna basically be even worse to you than they are right now. So you gotta leave." So finally, they enact this escape plan. Crosshair and Omega form an uneasy alliance, although Crosshair's really coming around. It seems
Yeah.
like he's basically on the good guy's side at this point, but they do manage to escape. And at the end, Dr. Hemlock is informed that Omega happens to be the clone that they need for these experiments. But he's like, let them go instead of chasing them and possibly destroying them because we need her alive. Let them go. They jump into hyperspace, and he's like, well, this is what does he say? A temporary setback, right?
Yes, yes. Because he has the full might. He's doing what Cassian always thinks the Empire is doing, which is, like, oh, we're so big, we're so great, we'll find them eventually. You
Yeah,
know, that's
right.
that's
So
his attitude.
he's overconfident,
Yes.
right? Isn't that what Luke Skywalker says?
Your overconfidence is your weakness.
Right.
Your
Yes.
faith in your friends is yours. Yes.
This is the same problem that the Emperor has. So, let's talk about the Emperor. What did you think about the role that Ian McDiarmid plays in this episode? He's back again. He seems game. So in the Clone Wars cartoon, I don't think Ian McDiarmid ever played the Emperor, right? It was like Tim Curry for old
Yeah.
us.
It was Tim Curry. And then eventually Ian McDermott came back. Um,
For Rebels, he was
oh,
the
okay, that's
Emperor.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But what did you think of, like, why do you think Palpatine needed to come and check this out for himself? Why do you think he personally needed to be there? Is it just because Ian McDiarmid was willing to voice the character? Or I don't know. It seemed odd to me that he personally would put himself at risk
Mm.
and travel to this planet
Well, I
with
think
just two
it's
like red guards, Imperial guards, whatever.
right. I think it's saying how important this project is. Like
Yeah.
the Emperor even says, like, this is the most important project to the uh longevity of the Empire. Like he basically says that in so many words.
Yeah. Right.
And so his presence actually being there, it's kind of the same as Return of the Jedi, how the Emperor's coming here. He came to the Death Star too, because he wanted to oversee its finished personally, and
Yes.
also lure the rebels into a trap as well. So I feel like by coming and showing his presence, everyone there working there will be extra motivated to be like, oh, the emperor's here. We better get on it. you know.
And Hemlock is very confident when dealing with he's basically like asking for promotions, you know.
Yes. I was like, whoa, Hemlock, geez. Like, way to show your hand there. I don't
Right.
know if I and the Emperor, I mean, if you've read the books, you know that he has a very long timeline in mind. So he's probably going to this
Yes.
guy, yeah, young pup. You just chill out, man. It'll happen, but
Yeah,
got a
so
few more
he's
years.
Palpatine makes it very clear to Hemlock that whatever the Empire can provide, he's willing to give it to him
Hmm.
to make this happen. It's like the most important thing in the galaxy to Palpatine to get this cloning project successful. So that's kind of where we leave things after these 3 episodes. I really enjoyed I think you're right that they needed to be released together. I think the middle episode in these 3 was my least favorite, the least interesting, but it kind of serves as a nice little middle chapter.
Hmm.
On its own, I think it would have been disappointing, but as a part of those 3, I think it works because you can check in on Hunter and Wrecker and see what they're up to, and that they're still looking for Omega. Just like
Well,
Omega would want to know that they're still out there looking for her. It's nice for us as the audience too. Go ahead.
yeah. It also highlights the fact because they meet these younger clones
Yeah.
who um those younger clones highlight the entire problem of the clones right now, which is without a war, what is their purpose?
Right.
Those young clones are like, well, we're young, we're like in our young phase, but now there's no war to put us in, so we're just like, what do we do? And it's like a kind of a microcosmic of the big question of what happens to the clones.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, great point. The other thing I want to bring up is that this arc of 3 episodes felt to me a bit darker and more
Mm,
serious and even more mature, I would say, than what I remember season 1 and 2 being. And I do wonder if that's going to be consistent throughout the season or if it'll kind of fluctuate, if we'll get like more fun, quote unquote fun episodes that we've had in the past for the Bad Batch. There was like the one last season where they were entered in a race.
yeah.
Like I wonder, do you think we'll get episodes like that, or do you think this is going to be a more serious season overall?
So we have no more Sid, which is kind of how they were able to do those episodic episodes, especially in season 2, where Sid
Right.
would like send them off on a mission, they
Yes.
accomplish or not accomplish a mission, and done. So they're not going to do that anymore. However, I don't think you can get any more serious than killing off a main character like they
Right.
did in the finale
That's
of,
true. That's
of
true.
season 2. But I feel like this season will have more of a through line of the character relationships, like how
Mhm.
Omega is relating to each of the Bad Batch and Betcha.
Yeah.
Um, and then also maybe a bigger scope in terms of the Star Wars galaxy, like how do the clones fit in, M counts, what's happening with that, the
Right.
whole Project Necromancer. We're going to probably get answers to that.
Yeah.
This season is also going to definitely explore the Omega Crosshair relationship more,
Yeah.
which is exciting. She's very, very, uh, what is that called? Actually, Jennifer Corbett was talking about this in our roundtable. Omega is a very sunny character. She's always positive. Crosshair is like the most negative of the Bad Batch and
Right.
most very negative character. So you put those two together and see how they can learn from each
Hmm.
other.
So
Um,
Omega will learn to be more negative, and Crosshair will learn to be more positive.
I think in general, Omega probably is going to teach Crosshair more in general.
That's fair. I
But
do hope we go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I'm going to go on another tangent. So
Okay.
respond to that and then
You mentioned that we are done with Sid, but you've seen more episodes than I have, so don't say anything. But I do hope we see Sid again because I do feel like that relationship is unresolved. So I
mhm.
hope there's some kind of closure with Sid. She did betray them, she betrayed the Bad Batch. So I don't know if I want to see her redeemed or what, but I would like to see Rhea Perlman come back and get a little bit of closure on that relationship. But go ahead with what you wanted to rant
Yeah.
about.
So, oh well, in this season, I think one of the themes we're going to explore is like the Empire's coldness and unnatural thing that they're doing with the Project Necromancer versus our good guys and their ability to interface with the natural world, like how Omega makes that relationship with Batcher. You know, she
Yeah.
domesticates Batcher, and then that ends up helping. So the music is really telling us this, not in any
Mm,
words, but in music. So, and I go more into this on Skywalking Through Neverland episode, but Tantus, Mount Tantus, it's a mountain, Mount Tantus, but it's completely unnatural. Like inside, it's all gray. It's all that the Imperial walls that are,
yeah.
no personality. The experiments they're doing are going against nature, as we see in Hemlock's abandoned facility where the Slither vines took over. And if you listen to the music in Tantus, it's all synthesizers and like synthesized keyboards and things that are created not unnaturally, but like they're created. They're not natural instruments at all. The only time in especially that first episode that we hear real orchestral instruments is when Omega is making an emotional connection.
Okay.
So when she's talking with Crosshair, you hear a flute. And when she's making her Tuca doll, which is tapping into her
Right.
creativity, you hear a French horn. But that's it. All the other times it's this synthesized clockwork kind of a theme, and it's just very it's very unnatural. So I love that. But then when we see the Bad Batch, like in episode 2 again, you get that full orchestral music that we always hear in the Clone Wars. When you go to a planet, you get like a different theme for each planet, kind of a thing. It's Kevin Kiner at his best. So that's how music is kind of representing that unnatural versus natural theme.
Awesome. Yeah, your interpretations of the music is always worth listening to. So definitely go and check out those. I'm sure you'll be talking about the music throughout the season over at
Yeah.
Skywalking Through Neverland. And Kevin Kiner, boy, he's having a real moment here because he did Ahsoka and now he's back with the Bad Batch. Always did a
And
great job. Yeah.
I have to make a note that this is the first Star Wars property that has credited Kevin Kiner and his kids, Sean Kiner
Oh,
and Deanna Kiner.
oh,
Yeah.
terrific. That's awesome. So they're contributing
Mhm.
as well. Terrific score for this show. Really enjoying this season so far. It's just getting started. We've still got a bunch left to go. Anything else that you want to say about the Bad Batch before we begin to wrap up here, Sarah?
Uh, um, let me see. Hold on, let me look at my notes
Sure.
here.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh hmm. Okay, yeah, I do. Can I just tease a couple things without giving anything away?
Yeah. Hints. Hints.
Hints. Okay. Okay. So I don't know. Do you remember the Outpost episode from season 2?
Yeah. That might have been my favorite episode of the whole show so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same. I love that episode. We will return to the Outpost.
Okay. Great.
So that's a little tease. Um yeah, that's all I'll say.
Okay.
Okay. Other
Cool.
other than
Very
that,
excited
I
for
think
that.
that's a little tease, and I won't mention much more than that, but it's a good
Neat.
episode.
Yeah, looking forward to more for sure. And there will be episodes every week until the finale coming up. I think the show ends right before May the 4th. Like it's the week before May the
Yep.
4th. So we've got a little bit a nice lengthy season of Bad Batch again. Let's see. We're going to wrap up this week's episode of Who's the Boss with our regular segment here called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. So my example this week is uh, a season, sort of like a mini series almost, of a show called True Detective on HBO. We watched it on Max, the HBO streaming service. I watched season 1 of True Detective back when it came out about a decade ago. Thought that was good. This one was also good, but different. It's got a different showrunner now. There's been a lot of controversy about this. I know people are either angry about it or loving it. It's one of those things that has elicited a wide spectrum of response from people on the internet that I've seen. I thought it was fine, well crafted, mostly well written, definitely well acted by a terrific cast of ringers. So check it out for those reasons. I know there are some story elements that have frustrated people. I will agree with that. It's kind of one of those mystery box shows where by the end of by the end of the season, you're like, well, they didn't answer this, and this doesn't make sense. And I'll agree with that as a critique of it. But otherwise, I thought it was worth watching. I know it did really well in the ratings and it got renewed for another season. So I will watch that as well and hopefully enjoy that. But that's my choice for this week. How about you, Sarah? Anything you're watching, reading, playing, listening, anything like that?
So my newest obsession, Richard and is because of all the awards it was getting, we got into Succession, the
Okay.
TV series. I think that's on Max as well. I want to
Yes.
say, yeah. And we are late to the party because there's 4 seasons and they're all out, but we got to watch them all at once, and we took like a week to watch the whole all four seasons, and we were
Okay.
like super into it. And it's it's a story about this billionaire who has 3 kids who all kind of want his top job, CEO spot,
Yeah.
and the whole what goes on behind the scenes and how they're all rich and they're flying around in their private jets and all this stuff to all these countries. And oh my god, it was incredible. I loved the outcome. I won't spoil it, but like
Okay.
my favorite character basically won. so so I was happy. Have you ever seen Succession?
This is one of those shows that has been recommended to me by pretty much everyone I know who's into media and pop culture, and I have not checked it out yet. It's on my list. I'm saving it for some reason. I'm sure
Save
we'll
it
get
for when
into
you
it.
have like a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's kind of a down season in our party entertainment business. So
Okay.
like we literally for like 2 days watched like 5 episodes each day, just like was just
Yeah.
binging it.
I'm sure it's great. I love the cast. I love Brian Cox. I love Kieran Culkin is great in the stuff I've seen him in. I'm sure I'll love it. My buddy said it was like Arrested Development, but a drama, which sounds really
Yeah.
like it's got
Yeah.
just a family full of awful people bickering
Yep.
and
I would definitely that's a good characterization of it
yeah.
with
So
higher stakes as well.
I'll get there. We have a long list of shows that we want to watch, and that's high on the list. So sometime soon, I'm sure we will watch Succession, but I don't know when we're gonna have time. But you know what we're doing right now is we're watching all the Best Picture nominees. So we still have
Oh,
2 left to go on that for this year. That'll probably be this weekend, and then maybe we'll dive into Succession. But I promise you, we are making an effort to watch that show. Okay, that's gonna bring us to the end of this week's episode of Who's the Boss. Thank you out there for either tuning in live. First of all, let's say hi to Stephen Singleton from Wyoming, and congratulations on your pending graduation there if you're still watching. Um, as always, please visit laughingplace.com. That's where we do all the Disney news and opinions. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining me this week. Thank you for coming back every season to Who's the Boss. Really appreciate it. And please go and check out Skywalking Through Neverland. Sarah, it's always a pleasure to talk to you about Star Wars.
thank you. Yeah. Also please check out Fangirls Going Rogue as well. We
Yes,
talk
and Fangirls
a little
Going
bit.
Rogue. Trisha Barr
Yeah.
has been on the show a bunch as well. I'm sure she'll be back. I have a new podcast I want to plug right here at the end that I'm co-hosting with my friend Drew Gergich from Heroes of the Halcyon, the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser podcast. We came together and decided we want to talk about all the pop culture that we don't get to talk about in our Star Wars podcasts. That's why I did this First Steps into a Larger World, because I love so much, consume so much pop culture. So this is kind of like First Steps into a Larger World, but an entire podcast. So go and check that out. Wherever you get podcasts, type in First Steps into a Larger World, And no, that's not the title of it.
Wait.
Pop Culture Explorers Club. I should have titled it that. It would have been easier to remember. Pop Culture Explorers Club is the title. Me and Drew Gergich talking about a different media, different element, different piece of pop culture every week over there at this other podcast that is not affiliated with Laughing Place, but I'm taking the opportunity to plug it here regardless. Next week on Who's the Bossk, we'll be talking about The Bad Batch, season 3, episode 4. So please come join us for that. Otherwise, I'm on Instagram at Who's the Bossk Pod. Where you want to plug any social media or anything there, Sarah?
Yeah, I'd like to plug one more thing.
Sure.
That is on the Skywalking Through Neverland YouTube channel. We have put out all the 20-minute roundtables that we did with D. Bradley Baker, who is the voice of the Bad Batch, Michelle Eng, who is the voice of Omega. And if you want a dose of positivity for your day, please listen to that. And also the showrunners for the Bad Batch. So if you want more Bad Batch, I've even created a playlist of all the Bad Batch roundtables we've done for all 3 seasons. So if you really want to deep dive and get more info straight from the creators, that's a great place to go. That's Skywalking Through Neverland.
Skywalking Through Neverland.com, and then on YouTube as well.
Yes.
And then laughingplace.com. I'll send you there too. My name is Mike Celestino. My guest has been Sarah Woloski. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time. Bye.